Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Twitter Spaces event hosted by CircleCI. I apologize for the slight delay in starting. We had some technical issues, but we're all here now, which is great. So we will start inviting our wonderful guest speakers to the stage. And while I do that, I will give you a quick intro as to why we are here today. Today we'll be engaging in a discussion about tech due diligences with a panel of experts on the subject who will speak about the best ways to prepare and also share their experiences from both sides of the fence, so to speak, as auditors and also leaders of companies that have been audited. So we have a wonderful array of people with great experience here, and hopefully they'll be joining our stage very shortly. To start with, I will give you some introductions as they join. So we start with Johann Romefort, who has just joined the stage. He is a technology due diligence consultant and also the author of CircleCI's new publication, A Guide to Surviving Tech Due Diligence, which you'll be able to download very shortly, and we'll give you instructions on how to do that at the end. We also have Alyx Baldwin, who is the co-founder of Stealth Startup and also has experience as an auditor herself. Then we have Benjamin Lansun-Luc, who is co-founder at Lito Legal and has done tech DDs from both sides as a CTO and also as an auditor. Then we have Zoe Constantin, who I'm trying to bring on stage at the moment, who is she is an investment director Europe at Impact Partners, and that is the first European social impact investing platform. So she has experience from the VC side of things. And finally, we have Luca Grulla, who is CTO at Signal AI and has also experienced his share of tech DDs. So I would like to welcome everyone to the stage now, and to open up our conversation, we'll start with a broad question, which is, can you all share your experience of conducting or undergoing tech due diligences? For some of you, that will be both. So I'll start with Johann. Good morning, Johann. Can you talk a little bit about your experience, please?
Sure, yeah. I had my first tech DD when I was co-founder of my first company, Seismic, back in 2008, and back then I had literally no idea what that was about, right? Like I was just told that someone is going to talk to me to, check the technology. I had no idea what to prepare and where to go to find this information. Now, moving forward to now I'm the other side. In the meantime, I've done quite a few things. I've also been an investor, so I've seen that side. And nowadays, I'm conducting tech DDs for private equity and VCs, but also training companies on this process, because some things that I realized is that a lot of CTOs like my case when I back more than 10 years ago. A lot of them are not prepared for this exercise, and I think there's something there to improve. That's my experience.
Great, thank you very much for sharing, Johann. Next, I'm moving on to Alyx. Can you just share with the audience your experience of tech DDs?
Sure. Yes. Previously, as a startup CTO as a co-founder in a previous startup, I was involved in an intense due diligence process, and then since then, I've also been an auditor, mostly small, medium enterprises, both trying to acquire other competitors and companies as well as private equity, That's my experience.
Thank you very much. Luca, you're next on my line of sight. So can you share a little bit about your experiences as well, please?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning. As Chief Technology Officer of Signal AI, I've been through a number of fundraising events, Signal started startup, now scale up. So I went all through the different stages, because different stage of different type of fundraising and different series will also ask for different details and different level of attention. And also as a CTO, I normally also contribute to the broader narrative of the fundraising. So the experience is definitely on the receiving side of the due diligence and how to present all the great work and the potentials also that the technology and the company can have down the line, because the investment is always for growth, right? So that's my experience.
Thank you very much. Zoe, we're coming to you next. Can you share a little bit about your views and experiences of tech DDs?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yes, Impact Partners is a private equity fund, and for during our investment process, especially for tech scale-ups, we conduct tech due diligence besides the usual other due diligences like financial and legal ones. So this is an important step for us. It's a very important step of our process. That's it for the moment.
Thank you very much. And finally, Benjamin, if you could share your views on and experiences with tech due diligences.
Yep, sure. Good morning, everyone. So first, as a co-founder and CTO of WiseMetrics 8 years ago, when we sold the company to another company called LaunchMetrics, yes, we went through a due diligence. And then when I became the CTO of LaunchMetrics, I went through another tough diligence as well when we raised $50 million. And after that, when we start spending that money actually to acquire competitors and companies, then I was more on the other side as an auditor and auditing other CTOs. And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. And obviously, we have such a wealth of experience here that anyone who is in the audience and has any questions about tech due diligences, just wait a little bit. We're going to ask some questions to them first, and then we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience as well. So make your notes and keep those in mind for later on. Next, I think it's a more general question as well, particularly for people who have had either auditing experience themselves as auditors, or in Zoe's case, as a VC who commissions these due diligences fairly often. What are you looking for? What are the main things that as an auditor or a VC you'd be looking for in a tech due diligence? So let's start again with Johann.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot is about risk and to understand what kind of risks the fund is taking while moving on with the deal. And associated to that is, the potential as well for growth, because obviously funds, when, this is when they invest money in a company, they want to see it grow. And sometimes, there are some technological aspects that will hinder that growth. Let's say if there's a lot of technical debt, for example, right? Like the company might spend the next 6 months, sometimes a year, to sort of like fix the technical debt before they can really, bring on new features to make sure they have enough stability, and that can be an issue for sure. Then of course, all the aspect of compliance, like is there a good disaster recovery plan? Because that's a risk, right? Like if your data center, and that happened actually a few months ago, where an OVH data center burned, can you recover from such a catastrophic event? And a lot of CTOs don't really think really in depth into those things, and take some risks there. And of course you have the usual suspects like security and data compliance, and yeah, that's kind of, so the overall aspect of it on my side.
Thank you very much for sharing. Next, Zoe, from your perspective as an investor, what are the main things you're looking for?
Yes, thank you. Johann mentioned a few important points. In fact, we are looking at potential risk and potential opportunities. embedded into the company and its current stage of technology advancement. Of course, we look at infrastructure and the choice of technologies and the priorities in the roadmap. What we think is key to us is understanding the security and the possible risk that could be a problem for scalability. So the current technical legacy or debt is very important because this takes resources away from the team and can be a real priority to be able to scale. And finally, also the quality of the team and the key person, like management style and technical know-how, is also very important because in order to be able to scale and to have an explosive growth, you need a strong team and a cohesive team. So the management style of the CTO is also very important. Well, in the end, we look at is the business plan consistent with the planned tech investments and the roadmap. So our main goal is also, if we decide to invest because we think the technology is good and the debt is manageable and so on, is also to get recommendation to mitigate the risk and give tools to the CTO to manage the different risks and to mitigate them.
Amazing. What a great bit of advice there for someone who is looking to undergo potentially their first tech due diligence is there. Alyx, you've worked in audits before, as well as, of course, being a co-founder yourself. What would you say that you would be looking for?
Yeah, a lot of that has been covered above. Definitely, overall, the weighing of risk is really important. From the auditing perspective, as I've worked with clients, it's really, from my perspective, it's important to know what they want to get out of this, what the costs and benefits of that risk will be, and specifically, I think that the overall data architecture and system architecture is really important to understand how sustainable and scalable it is, and how it might, if needed, can it be transferred to a different, for instance, if it's on a cloud, can it be transferred to a different cloud provider? And that, that's just like a very concrete example of something that I look for, just because that happens, like from a cost perspective, and and overall, also the team culture and development process is really critical, and as well as like communication. Something I like to do is speak to individual contributors at kind of like the junior developers, and how well does the communication that come up to the higher up or on the work. That's really important. Like that, measuring that is a good way to sort of get a litmus on the overall team's culture and communication.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Alyx, for sharing that. Benjamin, over to you. What do you look for when performing an audit?
Well, in my context, it was a bit different because I was acquiring companies to then merge into my own company. So I would say that first, I was really looking at the aside, of course, of all the standards and the documentation and so on. I'm really looking on the team themselves and the culture, because the mindset is super important, right? If you need to be agile and to iterate fast and adjust towards your business goal, the target company needs to have a mindset that could really work out with your own team. So that I think that is a super important criteria.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing that. And finally, Luca, from your perspective, I think, as you said, you've undergone more than done audits, but what has your experience been of what auditors are looking for?
Yeah, I think that all the recommendations that I shared so far are 100% spot on. I think that it's always a mix of technology, the current state of technology. So where is the starting point? What are the optionality that technology will give in the future? So the future growth, the scalability, the ability to support the growth of the business. What I call cross-functional requirements, security, data compliance, disaster recovery, and so on. And definitely there is always a part around culture and decision making. So as an organization, as a product technology organization, how you take decisions, how you support decisions, how you roll them out, and also how eventually you change your direction if along the way of your initial plan things are not going as planned or you're learning something new, how you evolve and you maintain that flexibility while maintaining a strong focus. These are the 3-4 areas that I always touch. And as a CTO, it's my job to present the most compelling story about all these elements, so that the auditor have a clear picture of the organization and how technology in the organization is a key part and is supporting and is aligned to the growth.
Great advice there. Thank you very much, Luca. Moving on to our next question for everyone. This is obviously one that I think Luca just touched upon to a certain extent, so I'll go back to him first on this. How would you prepare, or how would you advise that companies prepare for undergoing tech due diligence?
I think there are a few bits and pieces. Some are very practical, other are more as the mindset. The first thing is something that I just briefly touched, but I'd like to spend a bit more. The first thing is definitely as a CTO, you really need to understand what the business growth of the next fund around the one that you're pitching for is about. Is it about geographical expansion? Is it about more R&D? Is it about something else? This is the old story that you're telling to VC, to private equities, and it has to be clear because the technology story that you're going to say has to support that. So that's the first thing. Think about that. Be clear. And then as a CTO, as a technology organization, you need to create your own story in your own way. Like a due diligence in its own ways is a story you're telling, you explain, you take people with you on what you did and what you're going to do. So it's not just a dry list of things and technology. It's about why you've been doing certain decisions and how such decisions support the company and the vision. So this is sometimes a bit of a change in mindset because it's very easy to go and do a big list of technologies and metrics. The third thing in the mindset is about deeply think about your strengths. What are the strengths as a technology organization you have? And why are important to the goal? Often it's about the scale. Other times it's about having valuable intellectual properties. If you have it, capture them, put in front and center. And when you have that mindset, then the rest is much easier because the first thing you want to do is like prepare a few collaterals ahead of time. They will always come at hands if it's not in the pitch deck or in follow-ups. A few architectural diagrams are always helpful. Metrics on uptime will always be discussed. If you have a disaster recovery, your disaster recovery metrics are excellent to discuss. Your security, your pen test, what was the last time you performed it, how was the result. That's fairly easy to prepare, and if you prepare it ahead of time, it saves you the stress to have requests on the spot over email during the fundraising and have to run around to prepare it. And then, of course, prepare a couple of deep dives, around your strengths that you really want to communicate strongly. And don't worry about the other. You can always prepare more deep dives along the way, but prepare with a couple of things that you feel strong at, are important and center what you're telling, so that you can present it and be proactive and talk about that. Or if you need some time, they ask. You're ready, you have the structure, the backbone of what you want to talk to the auditor. And again, it's a much easier starting point rather than have to put this together over like half a day because you have a meeting the morning after and then everything gets too rushed.
some great advice there for sure. Alyx, I'm going back to you now as well. You, I'm sure, have plenty of advice on how to prepare for a tech DD as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really great points that Luca brought up as well. One thing that I really like to articulate is that to know your customer from the CTO side. So, from who is interested in either investing or acquisition or whatever in a due diligence process is why are they interested? Who are they? Ensure that you're presenting the best and most articulate version of yourself and your team, your product, the business operations, as well as technology. And you have to exude that confidence because it's selling, but it's not really selling. Because that's one thing that auditors are looking for is the CTO should be able to articulate the business to understand why decisions are made and have been made in the past, what the current state and the future state of the product and technology is, as well as the overall business operations. And that includes things that Luca mentioned as well, which is just documentation of code, architecture, system architecture, open source packages, resumes of staff, development processes, communication structures, cadence across the hierarchy of the organization. And I think some more tangible thing would be just be honest and upfront to auditors. Something that is really, I think, super crucial. If the moment you come off as untrustworthy, or you're revising a story in a way, or other people on your team are saying things that are different, then that increases the level of lack of confidence and more risk that's involved with that in the diligence process. And another kind of tangible sort of quick thing here would just be careful how data and security is handled during video calls with auditors. Because sometimes, most of the time, especially now, you will be demonstrating product through video call, and auditors are looking for all kinds of things, the behaviors as well as what your password links are, showing sensitive non-mass data, not having up-to-date operating systems or web browsers, ensuring and those are all kind of very, very tangible things, and they're kind of just extra checkboxes that get kind of assessed. And also, one more thing is just ensuring that there is not a bad pattern of bad choices that have been made that have not been learned from, including coding language architecture choices, lack of postmortems after development cycles, exit interviews, Glassdoor reviews, individual contributions, and team culture at hiring. Those are all kind of all combined within that pattern that you want to just make sure it's tight and tight narrative. There's some I can talk more about compliance and security, but I think that's good for now.
Thank you very much, Alyx. And I'm sure some of our other panelists will touch on the things that you haven't covered yet. So I'm going to Johann next, because obviously you have just published a guide on due diligences. So I'm sure you have plenty of things to cover on this one.
Sure, yeah. I think one thing maybe to keep in mind that we haven't really discussed yet is what is the stage of the company, right? Because depending on the stage, the audit is going to be different. I do anything from a very kind of sometimes even pre-seed technical screening to seed technical screening to, Series A and B. And you're looking for different things. If you do a screening for a seed company, you're going to have to look at, does the company already has a product market fit? And if not, as they optimize for agility, right? And fast iteration. And which is very different at Series A, where you're supposed to already have your product market fit, and you're aiming for growth. So that's different set of challenges. But I think a lot of things to be prepared on were mentioned already. Luca talked about, strengths, like knowing your strengths. I think it's also really important to know your weaknesses and to be very transparent about it. And again, transparency, as Alyx said, is extremely important. Like, we're really looking at, is the story consistent across, different team members? I will always, bring ask the team to bring 2 to 3 engineers on calls to, get a different side of the story and sort of cross-reference what I hear to make sure that everything is consistent there. And so talking more about weaknesses, I don't think you don't need to have everything right? Like, I haven't audited a single company where everything was perfect. But what bothers me is, if one big topic like security, for example, let's pick this one, or disaster recovery, where I feel the CTO has no clue about, the topic, and didn't really touch on it. So I think it's important to know where you lack and to have a compelling story. It's totally fine to say, look, up until now, we were really hustling to get where we were. And yeah, we did took some shortcuts. We do have some technical debt, but we have a plan to fix it. Same with security. Like, we have an audit plan in a month from now, and we are going to fix those things that we didn't really look at because, again, we were really focused on the product. So yeah, I have a compelling story. Know, all of the topics that will be covered, because there's definitely quite of them, and I cover them in the guide. I think that's really the most important part, to be prepared in advance. Like, don't look at the guide, or any other resources a month before. Like, do that 6 months before you go fundraising, because some topics might take more time than others to actually get fixed.
Absolutely. Some great advice there as well, Johann. Benjamin, coming to you next. Anything to add to what everyone has already said?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Johann just said about the weaknesses. I really, as an auditor, appreciate the transparency when there's an issue on security or compliance and so on. But as well, as an auditor, what I usually do is really cross-check the information against the team. I'm not only interviewing the CTO. Sometimes I will ask, for example, can I talk to the lead developer or the DevOps? Just to make sure that what has been said are really true and it's aligned with the documentation. And I think there's some CTO who are super confident, but maybe their team are not, and maybe it's because the CTO didn't really took the time to prepare them, right? So I would really advise, to not only prepare yourself as a CTO, but prepare your team.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Zoe, obviously, from a VC perspective, it's slightly different in terms of preparation from your side, but do you have any advice for the companies that you look at and the sort of things you're looking for?
Yes, of course. Of course, we will have the feedback from the auditor will be the most important. But one thing I think is key is in order to be able also to assess the quality of the CTO and its team is if I would be a CTO, I would document a lot. I would document in advance all my processes and so on. It's good for the audit, but it's also important anyway when you scale, because you have to onboard new people at some point in time, and having all these processes already documented is a major point. And the second one is also about quality of the team. It's about being humble and honest about what is suboptimal in the company and needs to be fixed at some point in time. And what I think is important here is also that the team has a plan and knows what are the pitfalls and what is the plan to remedy this, and to share this with the auditor. It gives the auditors, or us actually, a sense of, yes, the team is aware and is open, and they know, and they look ahead of how to scale the company. So I think these are the 2 points that are important, but that were also mentioned earlier. Thank you.
No problem. Luca, I think you have something to add.
Yeah, this is it's a great point about having a plan, and I think as a CTO, the ability to show to highlight areas that probably are not as good as others and share the plan is also a way to show to the auditor the overall quality of your organization and the team behind that. Because technology is a fast-moving world. Nothing will all the time be perfect because technology gets obsolete or the business needs different things. But by the fact that you're showing that you know what has to be changed, has to evolve incrementally or evolutionary even better, you're able to say that the people that are building this technology are switched on and they understand and are in control of their destiny. And you can trust this group and this team to take the business to the next stage of growth.
Another great point there. Thank you very much, Luca. Our final question for the panel is, what is the best advice or the main advice for other startups or CTOs who might be preparing either for their first or their next tech DD? And I'll go back to you, Johann, to start with.
Sure. So first, I think it's important to talk with other CTOs, right, and sort of ask them about their experience doing tech DDs, just to make sure that you understand what's at stake and what are the different topics to be covered. Obviously, do read what's out there. Again, like we have this guide coming out, which is going to be, I think, a good resource to follow. But there's also like a bunch of other things, obviously, that you can find on the web. Make sure you do your homework essentially. And as Zoe mentioned, I think documentation is important, because if you think on more like holistic sort of view, it's assessing a company for risk and growth is one thing, but at the end of the day, the tech DD process ensures that the company is in a good place, right? And whatever the funding is gonna be. So it's about building good company and strong, resilient companies. And that should be the primary goal of the CTO. So I think even if you don't have a tech DD, planned, it's still good to have a look at those topics that might come up in a year from now, in 2 years from now, because it's about building a good company at the end of the day. And if you lack on some of those topics, say like disaster recovery or security, you put the business at risk, right? Not only the funding, but really the business. So you need, as a CTO, to be really conscious of that and make sure that you have everything covered. And maybe one thing that I like to mention it's not only about technology at the end of the day, even though it's called technology due diligence. But what I really look at is team, product, and technology, and how all those things are actually aligned. Does the team has kind of a good strategy when it comes to hiring? Because obviously there's going to be funding coming up, hopefully. What is the plan to hire talent, right? Is the team actually capable to hire like A players? That's kind of my overall.
Thank you very much, Johann. Alex, over to you. What is the advice you would give to a CTO or a company going through due diligence?
I think overall, offloading as much risk as possible trusted third parties is really important throughout, not just in the due diligence process, but overall. And then that includes things like authentication, cloud hosting, anything that's not important to your core product. I don't think you should build it in-house. Of course, there's edge cases there, but that's something that, will help with not only the due diligence process, but overall scaling and changing out third-party clients, services, as well as compliance and data security. Those are basically just offloading all that risk. And I think overall the technical and human resource decisions are driven by that balance of cost and benefit to the overall product and market and business. And just understanding and executing on that balance is crucial. And the majority of your decisions will come up in the due diligence process anyway. So something to think about. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alyx. Benjamin, over to you. What's the advice you'd like to give to a company that might be undergoing their first or next tech due diligence?
Yeah, I would say that be prepared. And in order to be prepared, the best way is to go through a crash test, right? There's no magic. You can't have a good presentation of your architecture and so on if you are not prepared. So my best advice would be to get in touch with an experienced CTO and go along a crash test, right? Because any car maker, they won't go from their conceptual car to their production car. They would go along a crash test first, making sure that it's completely compliant and that it works, right? So my best advice is go through a car crash. Yeah.
Thank you, Benjamin. Zoe, how about you?
Yes, I would also advise to talk to other CTOs, maybe do a kind of pre-tech due deal with a CTO, a kind of pre-audit, maybe a lighter one than an audit that would be full powered by a VC or a private equity fund, but to do something like that. And quite in advance, at least 6 months before a new round, because it takes time to correct or to fix certain points and to cover maybe blind spots, so that you are ready for when you're talking to the actual auditor. Another thing is, yes, of course, it's a process that should be done regularly during the life of the company, even if there is no financing round ahead, just because it helps the team and especially the CTO to have discussion with sparring partners and to evaluate different options and also different point of views. And this is enriching for the company and risk mitigating, actually, I think.
Great points there as well, Zoe. Luca, finally, over to you. I'm sure you have things to add as well to the growing list of advice that has been shared so far.
Yeah, I think that all these are great advices and definitely help. I concur and 100% agree in agreement with think about these things early enough in your process so you don't have to rush into that. Give yourself the time to prepare. Then I'll probably share two additional advices for the CTO, but more for the company in this case. One is one theme that's emerging from the conversation we had today is as a CTO, put yourself in the auditor shoes. Ask yourself what they like to know and to understand more. That will help change the perspective, because as a CTO, sometimes you're into some of the details, and your instinct will be to go on give a lot of details that might not be so important. So by changing your perspective and think about the auditor will help you identify the important thing. And the other one is it can be a stressful process, but it can be long. It can take a month. There's some preparation. But don't forget, it's an exciting milestone for the whole business and for the technology team. So keep that in mind, because that will help you understand how to maintain the right level of energy, how to engage, help the team to go through that without feeling too stressed, but actually being confident so that when you're actually meeting with the auditors, you have a number of meetings, you have all the material, you did your rehearsal, and then you're going to have a great conversation with the auditor about your company, your technology, your product, and the potential ahead for you.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any other comments or advice before we go on to questions from the audience? Just feel free to unmute and speak if you want, or you can always raise your hand. And if you are in the audience and if you have a question, you can also raise your hand now and ask to speak, and we'll bring you up to ask your questions. If not, I have a question that we received earlier via DM. And this one is for Johann, but of course anyone can answer. Johann, you talked a lot about how startups conduct themselves. So response times and being professional on your webinar earlier last month. The question would be, how much does professionalism play a part in an auditor's decision making?
Yeah, I think it's very important in a sense that what I would put behind professionalism is, be responsive, because generally the tech DDs are, the time frame is pretty short, right? Generally it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks for like a Series A type of deal. So you need to operate really fast, and maybe also I'll give a few words on the overall process, because I think that is something that is quite unknown from CTOs. So generally you have an intro call with the CTO. Then following that, you have a list of documents that you're going to ask from them to put in the data room. So that will include architecture diagrams and all kind of documentation that they might have, also including some screenshots of some of the tools they are using. So you have like kind of it's much harder to lie when you have like the sort of proof, right? And then generally what's happening next is like the auditor will send a data request document. So they're going to send a document with a very long list of questions. For Series A, it's generally going to be like this document I send is around like 35, 40 pages of questions, trying to cover really all the topics in quite granular details. Also depending on the stage, right? Like sometimes it's more light, and sometimes it's way more detailed. And then after that, the auditor will review that and build, sort of the interview questions, and so you're going to have the CTO. Obviously, like you're going to spend quite a lot of time with him or her, and other team members. So generally, I will ask for like 2 to 3 engineers and the product manager as well. And after that, the auditor will create the report. So that's kind of the overall, process to keep in mind. Now, when coming back to professionalism, make sure that you are on time, that you are responsive to the emails, because if you leave like even sometimes 24 hours between 2 emails, like that can delay things quite a lot. And since we're operating on such a tight schedule, at the end it can be really detrimental for the whole process, and put a lot of strain on writing the report and so on. Make sure that you keep a good attitude, right? Like sometimes we see CTOs who are really defensive when they are being asked questions, and the goal is not to, of course it is to check quite a lot of things, but like the more defensive you're gonna be for the auditor, it's gonna mean that maybe you have something to hide, or something you're not comfortable sharing, and that's when like we're generally going to dig even more. So I think like it's always better when this is sort of a good vibe, let's say, and where everyone stick to some sort of etiquette. Be careful about how you talk as well, right? Like sometimes I do have like in the middle of a call, and I'm like, that's not very professional. I mean, be aware of those things, right? Like, and the auditor sometimes, and I mentioned that as well in my guide. Sometimes I don't know if playing tricks is a good word, but like we need to get the information one way or another, right? So if the CTO is very defensive, maybe we are gonna try to be more friendly with him. So it just like opens up, and being more friendly, means that maybe the CTO will be also less careful about, his overall language and professionalism as well. So, but at the end of the day, the auditor is going to look at every of those things to paint a picture of the company and of the leadership. So make sure that you stay professional.
Great advice there. Would anyone else like to add anything to what Johann said there about auditors using someone's professionalism as part of their decision making?
Yes, also I think that an audit, a tech audit, is the opportunity for the CTO to get a lot of advice on how to mitigate certain points. So the more the CTO will be questioning the auditor, the best it is for him, and it can be also it can give a positive image to the auditor, because if you are an open CTO, it means that you are considering different options and not being too much focused on your own opinion. So I think this can be really also a game changing for the CTO, because basically this is almost free resource. Yes.
Yeah, great advice there, Johann.
Maybe on that, that's a really good point that Zoe brought up. That's something I look at, right? Like I try to be useful. I know it's a stressful process, and I really try to put people at ease, but also really gives them concrete advice. It's not that I'm just listening and don't give any input. I'm like, hey, maybe that part you could improve. And then I look at how they react to this advice, right? Are they interested even in the advice? Are they going to be curious about it, ask more questions about it? Or sometimes they just brush it off, which is generally not a good sign. I think that's definitely the coachability, I would say, of the CTO to some extent is another very important point.
Great. Some great advice there. Any other of our speakers has any advice to add to that? Otherwise, we'll go on to the next question. And the next question is actually from me. I want to know from all of you if what would be the most common mistake that you have seen CTOs make or startups make when undergoing a tech DD? And this is open for anyone, so just feel free to unmute and answer.
I can go first. There's a list of kind of like usual suspects, right? Like security is definitely one of them. It's one of those topics that until something happens, generally CTOs are putting it on the back burner because it does take time, it does consume resources, but at the same time, and the thing is, with security, the outcome of the work you're doing is not necessarily obvious. It's just that you're going to avoid potentially some issues, but there's no tangible product outcome out of that, right? It's going to be the same for disaster recovery, where a lot of times I see CTOs who, they will have some things in place, right? Like, so for example, they might do generally they do backups. I mean, hopefully they do backups, but do they even test the backup to make sure that, they can recover if there's a crash and they have to go to this backup? A lot of times they don't, right? They don't test those things, or sometimes they will put the backup in the same data center as the production server, which also could be an issue if the data center burns. So So yeah, I would say, disaster recovery, security, and data privacy and compliance are generally the usual suspects there. Yeah. There's many more, but Alyx is going to jump on that.
Yeah, so I saw Alyx raise her hand, so I'll let her speak next, but Luca unmuted before as well, so once Alyx finished, we go back to Luca.
Yeah, definitely everything, reiterating what Johann is saying. One other thing that I just wanted to add here is it's always a human sort of issue, or like an individual contributor that is revealing something. Either it's a lack of communication, or there's truly an issue at the core of the process, and they are more candid. Those individual contributors are usually in the lower level of the organization, who feel a lot more than they probably should. But it's very insightful to auditors to understand the state of the company and the kind of mindset and the health of the company, as well as just the overall protection, where the people within the company, how they feel. So yeah, just that overall is just like, that's always kind of like a way to get more information that you probably should have readily available.
Absolutely. Luca, I think you unmuted before.
Yeah, from a CTO perspective, and one classic mistake is particularly true for the early stage businesses, like to probably focus on too low level details. You have a certain amount of time with your auditor and discuss. You want to get the best out of the conversation, both for showing what you're doing and also learning something, and gather feedback about potential improvement from the auditor. But sometimes people go to low level, start talking about specific libraries that are being used that in the grand scheme of things might not be important. So from that perspective, identify what's the right level of abstraction you want to talk with the auditor about things, and stick with it. Don't let your interest on a specific detail to go to low level and consume the time that you have with the auditor on those details.
Good advice there. Zoe, did you unmute before? Because I think I saw you. If you have anything to add.
Yeah, I think all the important points have been mentioned. I think maybe one last point is a mistake that some teams might do is not to prepare or to take this not really seriously. It's an investment from the private equity fund, and it's the opportunity for the team to learn a lot of things about the state of their company, and to be able to grow it on the safe side. So I think it's really a task that needs to be taken seriously. That's it.
Benjamin, go ahead.
Yeah, one area that it's not really a mistake. I would say it's more a lack of maturity. It's really data privacy, because very often I see some CTOs telling me, yeah, my database is encrypted. We have all the security in place, but when we talk about data privacy compliance, it's not only about that. For example, in Europe with GDPR, you are supposed to implement like a retention period for your data lifecycle. Making sure that after like X years, you have actually a process to delete the data. So this kind of stuff, including as well, like I see some CTOs who really forgot to collect the data processing agreements with their subprocessor, and this kind of stuff can really take like weeks and weeks to get like some signed DPAs with your subprocessor. So this is typically the stuff that you cannot do on the go while you have your tech due diligence.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Alyx.
Just a quick jumping off of what Benjamin said about specifically about GDPR. I think it's another fallacy is the kind of data that not only the retention policies, but the types of data you're collecting, if there's no purpose for it, then that also is an issue against GDPR. And so just not collecting data for the sake of it, but it always has to have an actual use within the company. It's really important.
Thank you very much, Alyx. Any final thoughts before we close? If anyone has any final comments to make before we finish up, now is the time, because we are reaching the hour mark. But if not, I would like to thank very much Johann, Alyx, Luca, Benjamin, and Zoe for joining us this morning and sharing their vast experience on the subject of tech due diligences. For anyone in the audience who wants to learn more about this topic, CircleCI has published a guide written by Johann on tech due diligences, how to survive one, with a lot of really, really good information and detail on everything you need to know, everything you need to prepare. And that will be published in the CircleCI Twitter feed very shortly. It's a free download, so all you need to do is go on the website and get it. And also, this session is being recorded, so we will be making it available for anyone who's missed part of it later on to listen to back. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for your time this morning. Thank you, CircleCI, for hosting us as well, and have a lovely day or afternoon wherever you are in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.